Training for advanced calisthenic skills such as the planche, front lever or muscle up can be very tough. I've come up with a method that if you're close enough in strength to learn the move effectively, this method will help you with your progression learning that skill. So in this method, we're going to go through 3 stages of how you should structure your training in order to learn these advanced skills very quickly. It's how I learned the iron cross in only a few months, and also how I learned things like the dragon Maltese, and even the Maltese, I seem to learn it out of nowhere. That's comments from you guys saying, oh wow, how did you progress so quick? It's using this method. The first stage of this method is muscle activation and conditioning. So when I'm learning a new advanced skill, the first thing I need to know is what muscles are involved in the activation for that skill, how do I actually activate them correctly and the correct amount, and lastly, conditioning. Am I conditioned enough to learn this skill? This is very important because you don't want to start learning an advanced calisthenic skill like the planche or front lever with the wrong activation, because first, that increases your chances of an injury because you're not activating the correct muscles that are going to assist you with the movement. So you may be relying on your strongest muscles and not using those weaker muscles that really you should be training. And lastly, you might have to go back and relearn the move once you later find out, oh, the activation is actually very different. I've learned it wrong. I would never do that personally. Yeah, that would never be me. Never happened to me with planche. So an example of this when learning the planche is going to be using the planche lean. You're going to boil the planche down to its most foundational regression, which is the planche lean. You're then going to use this exercise to learn the conditioning and learn the muscle activation, the pelvis position, your shoulder position, the depression, the protraction. All of this you need to have down so you can apply it to when you actually start learning the specific skill. Another example for the iron cross, this can be foot assisted holds. See, you're boiling down the iron cross to just the fundamental movement, your arms being outstretched and you applying the force downwards into the rings. You can do this with a regression, which is the foot assisted iron cross. That's why I really like this move. It was suggested to me by the bar Kage, so thanks to you, man. This is a great one for learning the activation, how it feels, and it also helps with the conditioning, which is essential for learning the skill. By the way, I realize I say conditioning a lot and I'm throwing that term around, but I never really say exactly what I mean. When I say this, I mean your connective tissue, your joints, your fascia, all of that. You need that to be strong enough because you're really relying on that as your base level of strength when holding these moves, especially for things that are wide like the Maltese and iron cross. You're really relying on your conditioning for straight arm strength. You do need some straight arm strength, so you need to condition your body to be prepared to carry out that work. So that's your conditioning. So you can do this a lot by using back levers. Back levers are great for conditioning those straight arms, but of course in any progression. This muscle activation and conditioning stage is very important because you don't want to start training, so even though you have the strength, your tendons might not be conditioned, you might not have the correct activation, so like I said, you might have to relearn it later, and at the end of the day you might end up training a different move because you don't have the correct activation. So now, after a few training sessions on working on the muscle activation and conditioning, you've now filled up your muscle activation and conditioning meter. Not all the way, but you filled it up a little bit to where you understand the movement a lot better and what your body has to do. You'll understand when you're in correct form and when you're not in correct form. Stage 2 of the method is time under tension. When we train a strength-based skill, we want to follow the fundamental strength principles, and one of those fundamental strength principles is specificity. So we want to train specifically for that skill we want to achieve. So, you know, if we're doing bench press, we want to do more bench press to get better at bench press. It really is that simple. So of course, in this example with the planche, back lever, front lever, we're going to use bands to learn them because we can specifically train the skill while increasing that time under tension. So if you're close enough in strength, you should be able to hold the skill with this green to silver or gray band. You should be strong enough to hold it in these positions. You know, with the heavier band, obviously you will be able to hold longer and the form will be better. You at least should be able to sort of get into the form with the red and sometimes with the silver band, but the silver band, it might take a bit more time. So now what we want to do is we want to work on time under tension. Time under tension is going to give us volume. So that's a lot of work. So we're not doing a lot of intense stuff. We're just getting a lot of work in so the body understands the technique and what it has to do in the actual move. Because before we were just doing regressions, now we're working with the actual move. So you're going to take those heavy-ish bands, you know, working with 70 to 60% of your body weight, holding that up yourself. You're going to train with this and go for long holds, 20 to 30 seconds. You're going to get really good at learning that form that you want because now you know the muscle activation, but you're going to apply it to the specific skill. Doing this is going to work on your muscle activation and increase your strength as well if you've not done this before. But but you also want to do unassisted holds. You're gonna do one of the regressions. Again, there's loads for the front lever, back lever muscle ups, even some of the harder skills like Maltese and things like this. There's easier regressions. You're also gonna train these because you wanna continue to condition your tendons to hold up your own body weight. Again, with the bands, if you rely on them, don't get used to holding up your own body weight. So things like your tendons, your connective tissues, they won't be conditioned. And when you come to doing it, without any bands, you're gonna struggle. So you wanna still do those unassisted holds, but go for time under tension, go for longer holds of an easier progression. So now by the end of it, your muscle activation meter will go up a little bit, and as well, your hold time and time under tension meter will go up as well. So this period of training is really working on that form and getting that hold time up. Even though you're using bands, you're doing those unassisted ones as well, so you're increasing that hold time as well. And the last method, before we go through a few specific examples of using this method, is gonna be the strength stage. So we've gone through the muscle activation and the conditioning by using an easier regression and just understanding what the body has to do in the movement, because it's a new skill. Then we've gone through and increased how long we're actually holding that specific skill. So now we're working with a band, actually get into the planche or the iron cross or into that Maltese, whatever it is. So we actually understand what the body has to do and we're training specifically for it. But we're also, not only using a heavy band, we're doing unassisted holds as well and trying to get to those lighter bands, but still increasing that time and attention to gain that volume of training. But the thing we haven't worked on yet and the meter we haven't filled is the strength meter. So we still don't have the strength to do the complete move with no bands. So that's what we need to work on now. So how are you gonna do this? Well, there's different ways, but the way I do it is using those two lightest bands. These bands are gonna help you with 10 to 20% of your body weight depending on the setup. So that means you're going to be holding up about 80 to 90% of your own body weight when you use these bands. You're also going to do a few attempts, of unassisted holds, just seeing how far you've come. But remember, when you're using these two lighter bands, you're increasing the intensity, so you can't expect the form to be the same as when you're working in that phase with the heavier bands, working on that time and attention and working on getting that higher volume. You're going to be working with worse form, so you're not going to be as protracted. Don't worry, that's basically how it goes. Your form is not going to be good when working on strength because this is going to be like one of the first times you do it. So you're increasing that strength meter just a little bit, but obviously you haven't completed that strength meter for that skill, so you're not going to be performing it with perfect form. I hope that makes sense. As long as you are actively pushing or pulling with the same activation that you know is correct from those other two stages, that's why those other two stages are so important, so you know the correct activation, you just don't have the strength yet. As long as you're pushing and pulling with that same activation, you're gonna get stronger with those activations. So that's why it's so important, and you want to ingrain the correct activation before you even work on the strength. So now you filled up each of your meters, your conditioning and muscle activation meter, your time under tension or hold time meter, and then your strength meter. Fill them up both a little bit, but now it's time to do it again. So you're gonna go around, do it again, make it slightly harder. Again, remember, progressive overload. So the muscle activation part, you're gonna make that slightly harder. Then the hold time, you're gonna hold longer maybe, or maybe use a slightly lighter band and try and hold it for the same time. You're making that time under tension part harder. Then the strength part, maybe you're using a slightly lighter band now, or you're going for the full thing unassisted this time. Each time you go round, your form's gonna increase, your muscle activation's gonna increase, and your strength is gonna increase. That's what you need to keep doing. But remember, it doesn't happen after just one time doing it. You need to go through and do it each time until all those bars are filled. This is the method I use. Okay, so let's go through a specific example now. So let's say we have a good amount of fundamental pulling strength and we want to learn the front lever on the high bar. So what we're going to do is first work on the muscle activation and conditioning. So we probably already have good conditioning for this move because you don't actually need so much conditioning for the front lever because it only requires a certain amount of straight arm strength, not as much as Maltese, planche, things like this. So we're probably already going to be okay with that, but so we're going to focus on the muscle activation. We're going to do this by doing scapular pull-ups because the first part of doing the front lever on a high bar is actually a scapular pull-up. So that retraction of the scapula. Look up online how to do the movement and what body parts are involved in it. The scapular pull-up is going to be the starting part of that movement. So you see how we boiled down the front lever down into that fundamental part and just working on that for now so we understand retraction and protraction and when we're in good and bad form. Now we're going to go into the time under tension. Once we have that sorted, we're really good with scapular pull-ups, that's no problem. We're going to go into that time under tension. We're now going to use a band to work into that scapular pull-up, hold the full front lever now and try and get a good amount of time retracted holding the skill we want to achieve. Now that we've nailed the muscle activation, we're going to work on the time under tension part. So we're going to do this in two ways. We're going to use bands to work on the full front lever. So we're going to start in that scapular pull-up so we know when the correct muscle activation. Straight arms, hold it for a good amount of time. Over time, we're going to try and get to the lighter bands, but at the same time, we're going to work with no bands and do unassisted holds of the easier progressions such as the tuck front lever, and also hold this for a good amount of time, trying to increase seconds and seconds from session to session or from week to week. And again, now we're increasing that whole time and the form for the specific skill. After this, we've got our form down, we've got the time under tension down, we're really good with long holds. We're also going to work on strength, and remember, you can work on strength at the same time you're working on volume. It's hard to do, but some people have heavy days or light days. You can do the high volume on the light days, and the heavy days can be focused more on strength. That's also one way of doing it. There's not one correct way, but remember the method I use, I kind of do each one separately. That's just how I found it. So that's the method I've used to learn the front lever, learn the planche, learn the iron cross, learn the Maltese. If you found this video useful, then you're going to find this video useful because I go through a specific method similar to this one that you can use to learn the planche as quickly as possible.